Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. Now in today's video, we are going to see an important tense. Now you picture this. You are sitting in a cozy cafe, sipping your favorite coffee when a friend says, I had been waiting for you for over an hour before I finally ordered. You're thinking, wait, what? Had been waiting? Well, don't worry. Today we are unwrapping the magic of past perfect continuous tense. When it comes to past perfect continuous tense, it is another tense that expresses the past in the past. So it communicates an action that began in the past, continued in the past, and also ended at a defined point in the past. Simple, right? So it's past in the past. Let's see some of the example. She had been working so hard. They had not been expecting to see her that night. We had been waiting all day for their flight to arrive. So all these sentences communicate that an action began in the past, continued in the past, and also ended at a defined point in the past. Now let's see the structure. When it comes to the structure, it is very simple. It's subject plus auxiliary verb had plus auxiliary verb been plus verb plus ing. So it had been raining really hard. So here it is the subject, had auxiliary verb, been it's again an auxiliary verb, and raining verb plus ing. She had been reading in the library. The same applies here. We had been working. Simple, right? Now it's time for us to practice the structure. Are you ready? You can see some of the sentences over here, and you need to change these sentences into past perfect continuous tense. Ready? Take your pen and paper, pause the video, read the questions by yourself, and try to write the correct past perfect continuous tense. Shall we start? I will also read it for you. She worked all day, so she didn't want to go out to dinner with us. They lived in Beijing for 3 years when they decided to move back to Canada. I wait for 2 hours in the rain. We sing in their choir for 3 years. It rained all week when they were on vacation. When you're done with your answers, let's move on to our next slide. So, how did you do that? She had been working all day, so she didn't want to go out to dinner with us. So remember the structure: subject plus had plus been plus the verb plus ing. They had been living in Beijing for 3 years when they decided to move back to Canada. I had been waiting for 2 hours in the rain. We had been singing in their choir for 3 years. It had been raining all week when they were on vacation. Easy, isn't it? Let's see the negative form and how to make question using this past perfect continuous tense. In order to form the negative in the past perfect continuous tense, simply you just need to insert not after the first auxiliary verb, which is had. So subject plus had plus not plus been plus verb plus ing. We had not been expecting to see her so late. So here we are inserting the word not after the auxiliary verb had, the first auxiliary verb. In order to form questions, you need to exchange the subject and the first auxiliary verb. It applies for all the tenses, right? When we want to form the tenses to questions. Here also the same rule: had plus subject plus been plus verb plus ing. Had you been expecting to see her? So here, had comes first, followed by the subject you. Now it's your turn. Pause the video, take your pen and paper, try to write these sentences into negative form. It's very simple, right? So you can finish within a minute. She had been working there for a while. We had been waiting in the lobby. They had been practicing their Spanish. I had been cooking all day. It had been snowing. So now your job is to turn these statements into negative form. It's very simple, right? Remember, you just need to insert not after the first auxiliary verb and you're done. How did you do that? She hadn't been working there for a while, so it's a contraction, hadn't. We hadn't been waiting in the lobby. They had not been practicing their Spanish. I had not been cooking all day. It hadn't been snowing. Now let's practice the question form. Read these sentences and you can try to put these sentences into question form. Remember the question form structure. The verb comes first, the auxiliary verb, and then followed by the subject. They had been looking for a new car. She had been planning a trip to France. We had been practicing piano. He had been waiting for the train. So you can pause the video, change these sentences into question form, and you can check your answers in the next slide. How did you do that? Had they been looking for a new car? So here had comes first, followed by the subject they, then the next auxiliary verb been, followed by the verb plus ing. Had she been planning a trip to France? So had first, she the subject second, and then been. Had we been practicing piano? Here again had, followed by the subject we, and then the auxiliary verb been. Had he been waiting for the train? The same applies here. Had first, followed by the subject. And as usual, contractions. In order to form contractions in the past perfect continuous tense, it's just simple, right? I had been, it's I'd been. You had been, you'd been. She, he, or it had been is she'd, he'd, it'd been. And we had been, we'd been, and they had been, they'd been. And remember for negative sentences, if you want to contract, so if it is I had not, it's I hadn't. It's just had plus not hadn't. And let's see more usage of this past perfect continuous tense. Past perfect continuous is very similar to past perfect tense, but it expresses longer actions in the past before another action in the past. Here, the example is the flight arrived at 8:30 p.m. We got to the airport at 9 p.m. So she had only been waiting for us for 30 minutes. In this example, two actions are happening in the past. The first action is about the flight arrived at 8:30 p.m., right? And the second action is we got to the airport at 9 p.m. Ongoing action before the second action, isn't it? Between these 2 points, she was waiting for us. This waiting was a continuous action that started after the flight arrived, which is after 8:30 p.m. and continued until we reached the airport, which is 9 p.m. So why we are using past perfect continuous tense here? The past perfect continuous emphasized the duration of the action, how long she had been waiting. Had been waiting tells us that her waiting began before we arrived and was still ongoing until we showed up. Now, I'll tell you how to visualize it. Imagine a timeline. 8:30 p.m. the flight arrived. She started waiting. 9 p.m. we arrived at the airport. Her waiting ended. So the past perfect continuous tense had been waiting highlights the 30-minute duration between these events. Got it? And that's all for today's session. Hope you like this video. Kindly like, share and subscribe for more English tips. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.